Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
And welcome again to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacey.
And I'm Phil Thompson. We come to you every week. We are a company called JSL Solutions, and we are, we're a tech company. Is that a good estimate?
Sure.
And we help churches use technology to fulfill their purposes. We do streaming video with StreamingChurch.tv.
We have mobile apps. We've got church management systems, and we have a new thing, Greeter.church.
Greeter.church. So look it up. But enough about us. We like to do these podcasts, and we like to help enable leaders and volunteers and churches and all that. So today we have a special guest, and his name is Jonathan Malm. And Jonathan is what he would describe himself as a creative entrepreneur and a writer. He's actually the author of a book called Created for More, which is a 30-day devotional, which is kind of designed to help you and I become a little more creative, get a more creative mind. And he's also written the book Unwelcomed, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. No, wait a minute. That's not right. 50 Ways Churches Drive Away First-time visitors. So Unwelcomed, 50 Ways Churches Drive Away First-time visitors. And that's what we're really going to talk to him about today, although we're going to probably get off on a couple of little things here. He's got several things going on. So first of all, Jonathan, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Well, we're glad to have you, and you've been a friend of ours for a long time now. And you've got several websites out there. And before we talk about Unwelcomed, which is a book people can get on several places, Amazon. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. You've got several websites, but I'd like to just have you quickly mention one of them called churchstagedesignideas.com. So it's all one word, churchstagedesignideas.com. Tell us just briefly, what is that?
Yeah, it's obviously a little bit cryptic what we do there. You probably can't surmise what it is based on the domain name, but no, we offer church stage design ideas. Basically, churches from around the world really will post up DIY information, materials, just the way they approached it, pictures on how they do their stage design. So churches who are kind of interested in sort of updating their platform or their stage, or kind of creating an atmosphere during worship, can go on there and just get free ideas and free resources for updating your stage. I've been running that for maybe 6 years now, and really churches around the world post up their stuff. And a lot of the stage designs don't really require a lot of money. A lot of the stages can be done for under $200. So It's a really cool resource for churches.
Yeah, and they include not only the pictures and stuff, but they give you the how-to. And this is how we put together this thing. Yeah, I've checked out several of them. So tell me, how did this get started?
Yeah, I was working at a church as a creative director, and at that time we were in a building that was built in the 60s or something, and our church was 50 years old, had a very certain aesthetic inside, but that didn't really match who we were anymore. And I didn't know stage design was a thing, but I just kind of had this idea in my head to do something on the stage, and we did it. I posted it on my personal blog, and I found that people were consistently finding my site searching for stage design ideas. So I'm like, okay, there's obviously, maybe I'm not the only person in this space, and maybe there are no resources out there, so maybe I should be the one to create resources. So I started kind of doing some public research, pulling in the people that I did know who were doing stage design and reaching out to others, and just sort of created the resource, and had no idea how many churches actually did this around the U.S. and around the world, but it's a lot.
That's amazing. So churchstagedesignideas.com. You've actually got other websites. So what I'll probably do here is I'll post some notes. I've had several people after me to post notes from our podcast, and I've been lazy and haven't done it. But I'm going to start with you. So I'll make sure that there's some notes here, because you have multiple websites here. You do writing, you write books, you do ebooks, you speak, you're a consultant. And so we'll get to some of that. So what we want to talk about today very quickly here is the book Unwelcomed, 50 ways churches drive away first-time visitors. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about. I think, and we've talked about this before on the Church Solutions podcast, how to make good first impressions and all that. I think I was injured or abused or something my first time I ever walked into church. So that's maybe why. But this book is pretty interesting, and you talk about a lot of things that we've talked about with first impressions, but you also talk about worship, programming, communication, the big picture, all that good stuff. So there's lots of things to talk about. We're not going to cover all 50 of them today, but I'd like to ask you first off, in your book, you have under first impressions, the locked door. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means when you say the locked door? What's that chapter about?
Yeah, so when I was working at a church, we had, it was a church built in the 60s again, and there were entrances everywhere. We had previously had a school, we had previously, had a massive staff, and it got to the point where we just didn't have that stuff anymore. We just had the church service on Sunday mornings. But we had all these extra entrances to the church, and we would lock the doors that we didn't want people to use to enter. Unfortunately, people are going to use the doors that they think they can use, right? Like they're going to try to get into your church, whatever door is closest to them, right? So consequently, we'd have people who were, pulling on doors and they were locked, and they'd have to go to the next door, and that would be locked. And that creates a very hostile environment for a first-time guest. You've experienced this when you go to a restaurant, and you're like, you pull the door and it doesn't open, and you pull it a little bit harder, it doesn't open, and then through the glass door, everyone in the restaurant's looking at you, and you look like a complete fool, and you feel like a complete fool, and you kind of just want to walk away, but then you look even worse. You go in and you just kind of feel bad. Man, that's a bad first impression.
I can definitely sympathize. I was just at a new restaurant just last weekend, and we had that same experience. We didn't go as far as pulling on the door. My wife was much more observant than me. We're like, well, how do we get into this place? And there was a door right in front of us, but she goes, oh, there's a table right up against that door, so that's not the door. We have to walk around the corner to find the door to the restaurant.
So I got a little ahead of myself, but you wrote this book, Unwelcomed. What prompted you to write the book?
Well, man, it's a little embarrassing, but I visited a church with some family, and it was for like a Christmas experience. And in the first 5 minutes, I identified 10 things that made me want to bolt for the door. I was like, this is, and again, I grew up in the church. I'm a pastor's kid. I get how the church works, right? Mm-hmm. But I was like, man, there are 10 things here already that have made me want to leave. And so I just kind of, as a, an exercise to myself, I grabbed my notebook and just started writing down those 10 things. I'm like, this is some stuff churches need to know about. And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, man, from my time working at a church, from experience visiting other churches, I bet I could probably come up with 50 of these. So it was almost like a challenge to myself, 50 things I've seen churches do that make me, kind of want to leave, right? But then I realized, okay, this is a very negative approach to it. So as I was writing the book, I realized, okay, so we start with a negative, but how do we take this to the positive? How do we make this negative experience, replace that with an amazing experience? And that's really what the focus of the book is. I don't want to just bash on churches because I love churches. I volunteer at my church. They do this stuff really well. And they, every now and then things that I'll hey guys, maybe we should change things up a little bit. But, the church is one of the most important entities in the world for advancing God's kingdom. So, why don't we get this stuff right? Right. Yeah. So that was kind of my goal in it, is just trying to help churches be amazing at this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a book, it's not a critical book in the sense of, ripping everybody down, but it's actually giving you positive solutions to some of these things. So I got another question from your list of first impressions here from your chapter, the pastor's dress code. Now I've been in pastoral ministry myself for well over 30 years. So this one sparks my attention here, and I'm not the best dresser in the world. Steve can attest to that.
Yeah.
Of course, I live in Tucson, so pants are not mandatory in Tucson. You can wear shorts and stuff. But anyhow, so the pastor's dress code, that's one that sparked my attention. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's a tough balance there because as a pastor, you want to reach the next generation. And we did this with my dad, who was the pastor at the time at a church that I was working in. We tried to get him to dress really young and really hip. And he's not a young, hip dude. I mean, he's one of the coolest guys I know, but he's not like hip as far as fashion. So, he felt uncomfortable. We were trying to get him to be something he wasn't. So that came across to our audience, to our congregation, that like, if we're trying to be someone you're not, that comes across as phony. Yeah. At the same time, you need to be able to have a relaxed environment, relaxed atmosphere. So the balance of being yourself while also not being too stodgy. I think a lot of times, previously the church, you wear your nicest suit, you dress up really well, and kind of the culture in which we live, anyone who approaches me with a suit, I feel like they're trying to sell me something, right? Like previously that was a sign they had, authority or knowledge that I didn't have. But now it started to become this thing where like, man, they're probably wanting to sell me something, and I'm not willing. I put up my guard whenever I see someone with a suit. So I'm a big fan of going a little more casual, but of course at the same time, just, being who you are, being relaxed, don't be someone you're not. Don't try to have the coolest, haircut if you're a 60-year-old man. I mean, Ed Young pulls it off. Like Ed Young Jr., that guy is hip, man. But that's who he is. For a lot of pastors, they're not necessarily going to be able to feel comfortable in that. So be comfortable with what you wear.
It's interesting you mentioned, Phil brought this one up as well. I had an experience with the Creator.Church thing, and the person was commenting about that they'd gone to the service over the weekend, and their only feedback was that one of the pastors was really trying to look really cool, and it was not working for them. This was a younger person, and they said, while that hat may, look really good on a 21-year-old, it didn't work on the 55-year-old guy.
Yeah.
She felt that they were trying to be someone they weren't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a pastor is going to typically reach the type of person that he is, right? Or he or she is. The personality of the pastor is going to be reflected in the personality of the congregation, because that's who they draw, right? That's just the normal thing. Like, I draw people who are like me. So if the pastor's trying to reach a younger generation, he's probably trying to reach someone he doesn't naturally reach. So it's almost like a disconnect of who I'm going to reach and who I'm trying to reach, and you're kind of making none of them happy.
All right. So, Phil, you were picking some off your list here. I mean, you got 50 of them.
We've got 50 of them.
We'll let Jonathan pick a couple, but I have one, too, that I can relate
go ahead,
to.
Steve. Absolutely.
Is you have a chapter or a section on the too welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the too welcome about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of think of it as like a cult a little bit. Like, if you've ever, you've probably never had experience with a cult, but you've met someone, you're like,
actually, I've been in several cults. I'm in one right now. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah, but you feel like, man, this person is they're really happy I'm here, like a little too happy that I'm here, and we kind of unintentionally do that whenever we have, let's say we have like 50 people. One person at the front of the church who hugs us as we come in. Man, as an American, I have a personal space bubble. Like, I need personal space, and if I don't know you, I feel weird hugging you. And I get it. I'm a Christian. I know that we love hugging and stuff, but whenever I'm first coming to a church, I kind of like to have a little distance, have a little safety net, right? Have a little safety bubble. And when someone hugs me, they pop that bubble. And then when someone inside shakes my hand and then hugs me again, that pops my bubble. So it's like all of these things we can do to kind of become too welcoming, like come on a little too strong. It's the same thing, whenever you go on a first date with someone, you don't immediately pop the question when you go on the first date, right? Like, hey, man, you're a beautiful girl. Would you marry me? Like, whoa, we're just having our first dinner here. Like, I think a lot of churches do that. Like, we want people so much that we come on a little strong.
Yeah, I waited the second date.
That's good. That's wise.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's good. I could tell you some stories about this too, but I won't when it comes to the too welcome.
Yeah. I've got some.
I think that's why it resonates so much. Is everyone has experienced these in some form. Like, you're like, oh yeah, like maybe not exactly, because I usually tell my story, but everyone else is like, yeah, I've been there.
Let me ask you this. In your book, and we're talking to Jonathan Malm here, and he's got the book Unwelcomed, 50 Ways Churches Drive Away First-Time Visitors. So in the area of programming in the book, you've got the tardy guest. What is the tardy guest all about?
Yeah, for a while I went to a church, a small church in a small town in Texas, and one day there was a guest speaker. He was, they had like a teaching team among the church, and he was one of the teaching team. And his whole message was about how when people show up late, it ruins worship for him. So his whole 15-minute message was basically making everyone who shows up late feel bad about themselves. And, regardless of how you feel about that, that's a lot of times what we do whenever people come in late. We kind of make them feel bad. Like we give them bad seating, or we say, hey, why don't you show up on time? Or certain things like that, where we try to get people to come on time, and it's just not going to happen ultimately. Like, people are going to show up when they show up, and no amount of emotional manipulation or making people feel guilty will ever fix that. Because here's the thing: is you have traffic, you have kids who can't find their shoes, you have Einstein bagels taking longer than it normally takes on a Sunday morning. Like, all these things that, like, you have the best intentions of getting there on time, and it just doesn't happen sometimes. Like, it happens to me too. I get there late too. So just the idea of not making people feel guilty for something like that. There's no need to. We already live in a very discouraging world where people already feel riddled with guilt and riddled with undue pressure. And why would we want to start off our services that same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to work with a church many, many years ago, and we would wait for people to show up. And so the service would start at 10, and so we'd wait till 5 after the start, and then people would come later and later. So it was 10 after we would start, and then 15. And finally, it was like 25 after 10. Before we started, and I said, I wasn't a senior pastor, but I said we've got to just start on time and not worry about these people coming late, because the later we would wait for them, the later they would get.
Well, and you punish the people who show up on time whenever you start late like that.
Yeah.
So just do what you do. Put your best stuff at the beginning to thank the people who showed up on time. Deliver your very best. And if it's amazing stuff, people will make an effort. But some people, that's not a priority for them, and you can't try to force people's priorities.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. That's a good point. Yeah.
All right. So I have another one here, but is there one that you would want our listeners to hear about, or is there a favorite? One of the ways that you offend the people? Is there one that jumps out for you?
I think one of these that I think a lot of churches do is reserved seating. I had a very real experience with that when I went to a Wednesday night service. My wife and I, we'd been going through a lot of very stressful environment. We just moved to a new city, and so we wanted to go to a midweek service. The church we were attending didn't have a midweek service, so we found one. It was a bit of a drive. Again, traffic. We were in Dallas at the time. Traffic was atrocious. So we got to the church a little bit late, and the church service was in full swing. And we couldn't find a seat. Like, there were two of us. They had a lot of the sections roped off because it was a Wednesday night service, and they knew most people, that there would be a lot of empty seats. So we were looking for a seat. There were no people helping us find a seat. And then we finally found two seats at the end of a row. And we approached them. The room was dark, and we approached it. We got there, and we saw Save for Usher. So we're like, okay, well, those aren't seats available for us. So we looked across the room.
You must be busy trying to find me, huh? To help me find a seat.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what the ushers were doing at the time. But so we looked across the room, and we found two more seats, and we walked over there, and no, those seats were saved. And then, of course, you had like hundreds of seats in the back and on the sides that were roped off that would have been perfect for us, but we couldn't find seats. So that's one of those things I think we do in churches, where we want people to be close together. We want to, maybe honor ushers, or we want to honor the pastor. But consequently, you have guests who can't find seats. And that's a scary thing, to be wandering around the service while people are worshiping, and everyone's looking at you like, what are they doing? While you're just looking for a seat so you can feel safe,
Yeah, my pet peeve along those same lines is when they have reserved parking for the pastors and staff. So, you know, I don't have any problem with reserved parking for first time or guests. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. But when you've got reserved parking for the pastors and guests, or pastors and staff, I don't know. That personally kind of rubs me a little wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like having a Starbucks and seeing 10 parking spots reserved for CEO, manager, employee of the month. Like, you're like, well, where are we going to park? Why these people are supposed to service? Why do they get all these? But we do the same thing at church, and not church as a business, but there's that same sort of mentality, like, wow, they really only care about themselves here. They don't really care about me.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which way you were going to go, because that is another one on your list, is the reserved parking. I didn't know if that was reserved guest parking. I didn't know if, some people, if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, our church actually is doing it now, and it kind of singles you out. If you park over there, then you got all these people, a lot of people I think may want to hide when they are coming for the first time.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've experienced both sides of that. We were going to a church in Miami, my wife and I, and it was our first time there. And we, again, showed up 5 minutes late because we couldn't find a place. But lo and behold, there was reserved guest parking available for us, premium spots where the rest of the parking lot was full. And that actually made me feel really good, really welcome that they had a spot for me. Really, for me, the solution is to have a parking team who is on the ball, who just basically shows you where to park, gives you the best parking spot available, makes it where there's no fear of finding a place to park. That's for me the ultimate thing. Like, you frankly don't need reserved parking whenever you have a parking team who are on the ball and who are getting you a spot as soon as you have it, or who can notice that you have kids and will send you to the parking lot that's closest to the kids' check-in area, or see that you might be an expectant mother and give you an expectant mother spot that's closer. That's really, I think, the ultimate, the best way to approach parking.
Yeah. So I've got a quick thing along those lines as well. I used to attend Chuck Swindoll's church when he was in California, and they had parking problems galore, because this is Southern California, but they had parking crews. But one of the problems they had is, the first time I drove up, the guy would he'd hold up one finger or two fingers. He'd go one or two, and I'm like, do I want 2 spots, or
what does that mean?
One? Yeah, I was like, what? And it was just it was a visual signal, and I felt really, I was like, I don't know, I'm having to pull up, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was this, as I came back, later, I learned, there was an inside code here. It was, you come into one service, or you come into 2 services, meaning you come in Sunday school and the worship service, or you just come in for the worship service. And so, because the deal was they would double park you if you were coming for both services, but they'd let you.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know the signal, and it was just kind of a little intimidating. But they were nice. I rolled down the window and I said, "Help me understand."
So
yeah, I mean, a simple sign that the parking lot attendant could have held up, saying 1 service or 2, indicate with your fingers. That would have solved that problem. And that's frankly one of the chapters in here is the foreign language. As we often have our own kind of insider language. Everyone knows Sister Sue, who hosts the monthly luncheon at her house, but guests don't. And every time you kind of revert to that foreign language and don't explain it for people, people can feel unwelcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just about out of time here, Jonathan, but I know you and I talked the other day, or I think we emailed each other, and you have a new website out, and it's a lot about social media. And we just talked to Kenny Jang about social media the other day, but tell us a little bit about what you've got going here as we wrap up.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited about the site. It's SundaySocial.tv. It's basically social media graphics for your church to use every day of the week. Like, we post a new graphic every day that you can post to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and it actually works for the day. So on a Sunday, there might be a post that really applies to the Sunday, or on a Tuesday, it might be like, what was your favorite Bible verse from Sunday, or what was your favorite worship song from Sunday? So we create those social media graphics for your church to use to really increase engagement and to just have something to post, some sort of encouraging quote or encouraging thought, or some sort of insightful question. And that service is $6 a month, and you get unlimited access to the backlog of content, and you get a new post every day at least, sometimes 2 or 3 posts a day when we're feeling particularly crazy. So StreamingChurch.tv, that's my new favorite site that I happen to run.
Awesome. Well, that'll fit in nicely with what Kenny was talking about last week. So we're out of time here, so people can find you by going to jonathanmalm.com. That's Jonathan, JONATHAN, MALM.com. That's your blog, right? And and as I said at the beginning here of our podcast, you've got several other websites. You do writing, you do speaking, you do consulting, and it's just a pleasure to have you on. We got to have you on again because there's so much stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
You're a great resource for us and churches out there as well. So, all right, good deal. All right, well, look, so we're out of time. Folks, we'd love to get your feedback on this. Do you think Jonathan is just crazy? Well, you can send us an email, support@StreamingChurch.tv. We'd love to get your feedback on this little thing we talked about today, 50 Ways Churches Drive Away First-Time Visitors. The book is Unwelcomed. It's available on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anywhere else people can get it?
Yeah, Amazon, iBooks, I think on Nook. I think those are the main places you probably want to get it.
And a little plug, I was checking it out on Amazon. You've got a lot of reviews, and they're all really good. So I was very impressed.
Pretty happy with that.
Yeah, good deal. So we'd love to get your feedback on that stuff. And that's it. We're out of time. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today on the Church Solutions podcast. I've been talking to Jonathan. The guy next to me is Steve Lacey. I'm Phil Thompson. We hope you have a great day. We will catch you next time on another edition of the Church Solutions podcast.